5.
Last summer, I stayed for a couple of weeks in Paris with a priest who had a case that involved a Ouija board. A young man came into his office a few months before and told him that he had been to 3 other churches and they had all turned him down or didn't believe him, so he had come to him. His grandmother had gotten him a Ouija board about a year earlier. He began playing with it and got into contact with something. He began to feel the urge to use the board more and more. It got to the point that if he wasn't using it multiple times a day, he would become extremely ill, like the loss of physical strength to do anything except grab the board. It was at its worst when he began seeking help with churches, primarily because his parents didn't believe him. So the priest went to his house, tried to explain to the parents that the supernatural is in fact real and there is proof in what is happening to their son. After a half an hour, he convinced them to allow him to bless the home and take the Ouija board. When he got back to the parish, he attempted to burn the board. However, it simply wouldn't burn. This is even after pouring gas on it. He then tried to tear the board, but couldn't even make a scratch. All of this disturbed him because it was a cheap board, like something you'd buy at a toy store. In the end, he ended up saying a minor exorcism, blessing the board, and then tried to burn it. He said it went up within a matter of seconds. Anybody who thinks these boards are just games are grossly mistaken. Personally, it seems to be too much of a risk. The grave dangers far outweigh any perceived benefit.
Number 4.
Some of my friends and I brought a Ouija board to a pioneer cemetery in the country, and were able to contact one of the women buried there. Normally, I would have suspected that one of my friends was moving the planchette, but here's what happened. This particular cemetery is out in the cuts, so there was no lighting, and the moon was not full enough to illuminate anything. Our flashlights were the only source of light. We walk through the cemetery, set up the board in a clearing, and start asking questions. At first it does nothing, but soon starts to move, and we get a name, Eliza. I'm still very skeptical, and I'm wondering which one of these jokesters is moving the planchette. Someone asked how old she was when she died. The Ouija board says 54. We ask if she wants us to stay. She says yes. One of my friends starts shining his flashlight on the gravestones around us, none of which anyone has looked at, which I know because in order to read them properly, one would have to shine a light directly on the gravestone. One of the stones closest to us reads Eliza Taylor, 1862 to 1916. Needless to say, we freaked the fuck out and hightail it out of there. A few days later, I Google the cemetery and find that some people have reported seeing some lady in a period dress beckoning them over to the grave of the woman who we think contacted us. Fucking creepy.
Number 3.
I've shared before, but I will share again. My stepdad is the kind of man that doesn't lie, ever. Which is why I believe his story about a Ouija board experience he had when he was younger. He said he had friends over, and they had a Ouija board, and they wanted to play. After a bit of playing around, they made contact with something that said it was a demon. His friends were asking it questions, but he said that it pinpointed him. It told my dad that it would visit him again later after midnight. Thoroughly freaked out, they put the board away. My stepdad fell asleep, and with dead seriousness, said that he was woken again right after 12. The demon had told him its name, but my stepdad refused to tell me. He was genuinely afraid. Anyway, he said this thing woke him up, and it was sitting at the end of his bed, grinning. He said that it was small, and evil as all hell looking, just grinning at him. The thing told him that his first child would die, and it left. My stepdad said afterwards he tried to get rid of the board. He first threw it out in the trash, but that didn't work. He said a few days afterwards, a little black boy that he had never seen in his neighborhood showed up at his door with the board. He simply handed it to my stepdad and said, "This is yours," and left. So now, super freaked out, my stepdad tried to burn it, but it wouldn't catch fire. The fire kept dying out no matter what he did. So then, he dug a very deep hole, put the board in it, placed a Bible on top of it, and buried it. He's not seen the board since. As far as what the demon predicted, it came true. His first wife miscarried at 3 months. I wholeheartedly believe my stepdad's story, and it's why I never got a board or messed around with one.
Number 2.
Here's a Ouija story that still freaks me out to this day. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. When I was stationed in Germany in the early 2000s, me and a group of friends decided to play the Ouija board in our military dorm rooms. Only 4 of us actually played, while a couple more people drank and watched. After a couple of minutes of joking around, we started asking more serious questions. We eventually got in contact with the teen girl who told us she was looking for her boyfriend. She said that they were driving back from a Grateful Dead concert when they crashed their car and died, and she hadn't seen him since. The road they crashed on was one we knew well. It connected 2 Air Force bases and was pretty curvy and dangerous, and a lot of people had crashed and died while driving it. After a couple of minutes of small talk, she told us she had to leave, but asked if we could please find her boyfriend for her and gave us his name. I've forgotten it over the years. We were eventually able to make contact with him, and we asked him if he knew Cheryl, the girl's name, and he said yes. She was his true love, and he regretted not being able to be with her, and he missed her very much. He told us to tell her that he'd always love her and that he was sorry. When we asked him what he was sorry about, he just spelled out random letters until eventually he stopped communicating. After around 10 minutes of unsuccessfully trying to get in touch with Cheryl or her boyfriend, we finally got in contact with an older woman. She seemed really sweet and nice, and she said that she knew Cheryl. When we asked her why she was unable to find her boyfriend, she said it was because Cheryl was in heaven and her boyfriend was in hell. It was at that moment where the candles in the room flickered out, and we all jumped up and turned the lights on. Needless to say, everyone got pretty freaked out and decided to stop playing, and we never really talked about it after that. It's been over 10 years, and it still freaks me out thinking about that night.
Number 1.
My girlfriend told me about an experience she had with a Ouija board back in high school sometime in 1986. She had a friend named Johnny who was suffering from cystic fibrosis or some other debilitating illness, who had recently been hospitalized as a result. Both she and her friend Shelley visited Johnny regularly in the hopes of keeping his spirits up for a quick recovery. One night, after visiting Johnny, they were at Shelley's when they decided to try out a Ouija board. After a while, they started communicating with a spirit who seemed to know a lot about them that it really shouldn't. After some banal questions about boys and general questions one would expect teenage girls to ask, my girlfriend decided to ask about Johnny and his condition. The board quickly spelled out, 24, June, 1987, Johnny won't have to worry anymore, and went to goodbye. My girlfriend and Shelley were so convinced that the board was giving them a date for recovery that they actually wrote the message down and sealed it in an envelope. The following year, on 24 June, it turned out that Johnny indeed no longer had to worry about his condition, as it was the day he died.